programme, but for now, here's the rest of the day's news.
More than 120 Muslim scholars from around the world joined an open letter to fighters and followers of ISIS, denouncing them as un-Islamic by using mainly Islamic terms. The 18-page letter picks apart the ideology of the fundamentalist group, who have left a wake of brutal death and destruction in their bid to establish a transnational Islamic state in Iraq and Syria. Nihad Awad, the director of the Council of American Islamic Relations, the group who released the letter in Washington, D.C., said that the letter was a point-by-point refutation of ISIS, challenging their philosophy and the violence they perpetrated. The letter also called for Western media and world leaders to stop calling the group the Islamic State, arguing that it plays into the group's message that it is protecting Muslim lands from non-Muslims and is resurrecting a caliphate in the region. The International Criminal Court has opened a formal investigation into the endless list of atrocities and war crimes committed in the Central African Republic. The ICC prosecutor, Fatah Bensouda, said that the reported incidences of such crimes have been widespread on all sides, saying to the media, "The list of atrocities is endless. I cannot ignore these alleged crimes." Thousands have been killed, and around a quarter of the country's 4.6 million people have been displaced since the start of fighting in 2013. After a ceasefire came into force in August, a new UN mission has taken charge of peacekeeping operations since last week, which will eventually consist of 12,000 soldiers and police officers from around the world. The French government has said that it will not be intimidated by terrorists, following the beheading of a French tourist in Algeria by a group linked with ISIS. Javier Godel, a nature guide and photographer from Nice in southern France, was kidnapped on Sunday by a group calling themselves the Caliphate Soldiers. Newspapers in France today carried somber headlines, condemning the beheading as barbaric, while the French government said that it would continue to support the bombing campaign against ISIS in Iraq and Syria.
Elle n'a pas peur parce qu'elle ne doit pas avoir peur. La peur est le sentiment que les terroristes veulent instiller et c'est une victoire des terroristes si la peur s'installe. La France n'a pas peur. Elle est armée pour faire face à ces crimes abominables, elle les combattra, elle ira jusqu'au bout de ce combat pour que les valeurs de respect, de tolérance, d'humanité l'emportent sur la barbarie. Et ce combat, nous le menons, encore une fois, à l'extérieur et à l'intérieur.
Burma's ruling military released 109 children from its ranks today, in its single biggest discharge of child soldiers. However, boys are still being illegally recruited from poor families. The United Nations said that the military wants to professionalize its ranks, and the presence of child soldiers may block military cooperation with neighboring countries that could provide assistance.
This is the largest release ever since the signing of the plan, and we've been also very happy to notice that we've seen an acceleration in the release of children and young people, especially over the last 11-12 months.
The United Nations added that 7 ethnic minority guerrilla forces, which have fought or are still fighting with the government, were also using child soldiers. A reformist semi-civilian government in Burma took power in 2011, but has been criticised in recent years over its abuse of human rights of the minority Muslim Rohingya population. Australian police have said that they have shot dead a teenage terror suspect after he reportedly stabbed 2 counter-terrorism officers. The 18-year-old man, who had his passport suspended a week ago, was asked on Tuesday to attend a police station in the southern Australian state of Victoria. Police said the man had been displaying a flag linked to the militant group ISIS at a local shopping mall and had been of interest to police for months. Following the incident, religious leaders in Australia called for restraint and common sense in the face of escalated fears of terrorism.
As we have repeatedly preached in private and in public, in Arabic and in English, the horrors conducted overseas in the name of any religion are crimes against humanity and sins against God. The recent call for violence from overseas, targeting Australia as well as other countries, has no religious authority and must be rejected.
The incident comes days after sweeping raids, involving hundreds of police, managed to thwart what they said was an imminent plot to behead a member of the public. Australia is on high alert for attacks by homegrown fighters returning home from the conflict in the Middle East. Nathaniel Amos-Sansom, the report.
Joining me now in the studio, co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative, Abdullah al Andalusi, and still with us, Dr Wafik Moustafa. Thank you, Dr Wafik, and thank you, Abdullah, for joining us. Now, we saw a few different stories there in the news. The first thing I did want to come to you was in Australia. We heard of the young man, 18-year-old young man, shot dead. This was after allegedly him stabbing other people and supposedly inspired by the letter released by Adnani earlier this week. The letter, of course, comes from an IS spokesperson calling on comrades all over the world to come out and attack people. Are we likely to see more of this?
Well, I don't think that there'll be more attacks per se, but I think you look in the context. Now, why it was regrettable that violence occurred and also it was led to someone being shot. If you look at the context, he had his passport deprived a week before that. For months, he was of interest to the police. I mean, these were special forces or secret forces, just requesting that he come to the police station. I mean, he was being harassed. He felt he was being harassed.
18-year-old young man.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was accused of having a flag linked to the ISIS group when the flag is just the generic black, Shahada flag, which is used by a variety of movements and groups, including just mainstream Muslims. So he probably felt he was being harassed. Now, it doesn't excuse what he did, but if we have to question the wisdom of harassing people, and then when we get a violent reaction from them, we have to look at where the blame lies as well. Now, the blame lies with him, but it also lies with those who were harassing him as well. We should try to avoid harassing many Muslims, because what many analysts have shown is that this leads to radicalization, harassment by the government and security services.
Okay, Dr. Wafik, I want to bring up another story with yourself. We heard of a letter in the US where 130 different teachers, imams, coming together to condemn IS. This was a letter addressed to Baghdadi, talking about the position they take. This came a week after a letter here in Britain. Do these sorts of letters have any impact?
It doesn't, because unfortunately imams, or many of them at least, they go with the wind. I wish they are true what they say. Of course, they should condemn, but they should have not need prompting. They haven't been done anything about it. The rearing of children into being indoctrinized in political Islam, radicalization, has been going for years, probably 20, 30. I've been living in England for 40 years, and I've seen change in the period I lived in this country. So I think we have more to do, because rearing children and politicization need to change.
Abdullah, do we have more to do?
Well, I think for the Muslim community, the problem is not that the Muslims are politically engaged with Islam and a viewpoint from Islamic perspective, but rather a lot of the issues are to do with Western foreign policy, which is the biggest radicalizer, including Western domestic policy and a clampdown on political dissent. While it is good for Muslims to engage in internal political criticism, I too myself have criticized ISIS theologically, I feel that the Muslim community is under pressure by the government to condemn ISIS, and we shouldn't be roped in by government for their own foreign policies. They have their own agenda with regards to the Middle East, and we shouldn't be helping the governments to do this. Well, at the same time, I would condemn some of the bases behind these criticisms. For example, Osama Hassan, who's not a mainstream scholar or even liked by the British Muslim community, said that people just going to Syria are betraying their societies. We're not betraying our societies by going for humanitarian aid or to help the Syrian people. Rather, we are being faithful to Islam and being faithful to the Muslim community, the worldwide global Muslim community. Nationalism doesn't figure in Islam, and we reject that criticism.
What are your thoughts on these sorts of letters?
Well, I think that basically, again, I think they're pandering to appeasement of Western politicians, Western society, like we are under scrutiny, we are culpable unless we disassociate ourselves. While I welcome internal criticism amongst Muslims, we shouldn't be pandering to demands for apologizing for other people's actions, just as the West would not like to be, many people in the West wouldn't like to be associated with other people who do crime. Likewise, we should be held to the same standard.
Dr. Wafik, now in North Africa we've seen a number of groups come out to support IS. We saw the beheading of a French individual yesterday by the group in Algeria. Now Boko Haram have been another group who had pledged their allegiance, but Abdullah Shehu allegedly has been killed just today, and the group some of them seem to have left the movement. What sort of an impact do you think this will have?
I think the IS or Caliphate have huge impact. We cannot underestimate IS. It had ports, it had ships, it had support from governments in the Middle East. So it's not something very little. It's got to be dealt within the Muslim country, the Arab countries got to work together. The public got to know. I think it's a big problem, and using violence as well on a personal level because someone angry about something is something we have to condemn all the time. I can't see if someone have his passport confiscated from him as a police, his answer will be stabbing someone. I think we got to relook at our ways of behaving in a democracy.
Abdullah, do IS have support from governments in the Middle East?
No, I don't. They don't. They have support from a lot of people in different populations in the region, true, but they don't have support from the governments. They've been condemned as terrorists by a whole variety of governments, a whole variety of Gulf countries. And I think when people use this argument, they try to kind of use it to kind of politically attack other countries by saying you're the fault of this, you're the fault of this, and so on. Whereas what we're seeing is ISIS are virtually against everyone in the region. But I think that the real issue here is, and the key to draining the swamp of support for terrorism is addressing the injustices which lie at the core of these grievances that cause this. IS are the manifestation of a problem. We should deal with the root cause of that problem, which is the injustices, which is the lack of independence of the Muslim regimes, that Muslims lack control of their own destiny, they're being controlled by foreign powers, and that Islam isn't permitted to have a role in governing society, which is what the Muslims desire. And so this is the kind of problems that we see, and we have to address these ones.
Did you want to quickly come back on that?
I would say we need reformation of Islam because it's very divided religion, very divided people. I'm a Muslim, I'm Sunni background. We're extremely divided. We cannot run away from the problem. We cannot live in denial anymore.
I would say that we're living in denial if we think that secularism will provide the solution when Bashar al-Assad, Egypt, and all these governments are secular governments, and they are oppressing the
dictators.
Secular dictators, but secularism nonetheless. Secularism doesn't solve problems, and Iraqi democracy caused more problems than it solved.
On that note, we're going to go on a break. When we do come back, we'll be looking at the arrest of Anjem Choudhury and 9 others earlier today.